Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bass Shed Podcast. My name's Ryan Roberts. How you doing, folks? My name's Ryan. I would like to welcome all the new listeners. Thanks for checking out the podcast. You can also find information at facebook.com/TheBassShed, Twitter @BassShed, Instagram @TheBassShed. There's a YouTube channel. There's links to all of it at TheBassShed.com, and you can email me at Ryan@TheBassShed.com as well. You can sign up for the newsletter that goes out probably a couple times a month, right? Letting everybody know what's going on with the content on the website as far as upcoming guests on the podcast. And you can sign up for the newsletter by texting the word SHED, SHED, to 66866. Once again, that is the word SHED, SHED, to 66866. So today on the show is bassist, composer, and producer Aidan Carroll. I met Aidan around 2 years ago, maybe. He was still living in New York at the time, but coming out here pretty frequently to check it out and get in touch with the people in L.A. he knew. And I was doing a gig with some mutual friends of ours, and I met him there. I had a really good time talking with Aidan, and we just jump right in to the conversation on kind of the topic of the artist's journey, but that wasn't necessarily intended. That's just where the conversation picked up. You'll hear Aidan reference his record, where he was a bass player, band leader, and that's called Original Vision. That is on Spotify. I have links to all of Aidan's stuff on Spotify, his Spotify page, at TheBassShed.com. I'm not sure where you're listening to this podcast, but you can find information there, or just go to Spotify and type in Aidan Carroll, and his page will come up. So here it is. The conversation you're kind of being dropped into right now is Aidan and I discussing, just artistic mentality, like where we go in our heads, the personal struggle with dealing with yourself as an artist and in doing this whole thing. So that's what you're kind of being dropped into. Here's my talk with Aidan Carroll. Yeah, so once you make that decision, like, things kind of naturally fall in line a little bit.
Yeah.
And it works out. I've done it, and there's an element of apprehension, because it's just like, oh, man, how is this gonna... Like, I can't see the finish line.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting out of the starting blocks.
Man, that's interesting, because, seeing the finish line, sometimes I'll see too far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have that opposite problem.
Okay.
Because I was telling someone about this, maybe a little too deep, but I did a tarot reading in June.
Okay.
And I hadn't had one in a long time, and I was just kind of curious
what
would come out of it.
Now, going into that, how much stock do you put into this? Is it kind of entertainment, or is it...
It's just interesting to me. The same way that astrological signs could be I more take it as something to be aware of.
Yeah.
I don't living my life by it.
Right.
But the tarot thing was pretty spot on.
Really?
Yeah, I think for me.
How did that? What was the response of the cards?
Basically, I got a few messages, and one of them was to not look outside of yourself so much, or to look too far off into the distance, to sort of know what you have within is enough.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, damn, I am working with this one artist I have a good vibe with. Maybe I should just relax and be cool with that,
and let that unfold.
Other things kind of come in, and of course, that doesn't mean necessarily that I can just relax and not
you still have to work, right?
We all have to work, but it was just more of a mental and spiritual thing to be relaxed, and know what you have.
Sure.
Know your worth. Your
right.
Whatever you have.
Yeah, that's hard to rely on sometimes because we don't see it. what we do, like even as just an instrumentalist, like you don't know how you really sound because you've heard it all before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so you can't gauge yourself accurately. So either you have a really low self-esteem and you're never going to move forward as you should be, or there's this ego that's completely also an imbalance. Yeah. That's like you're projecting to be somebody you're not.
Right.
And then that's not fair either. So like having a personal, honest gauge.
And like a balanced position.
Right.
I mean, we're not really our best critics, but we're also our worst critics.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to find a middle ground.
Right. And sometimes not thinking about it and just releasing it. Like doing your best, and that's what it is at this stage in the game.
Yes.
Is kind of that's what I've come to. Like,
absolutely.
I'm still, I still work on my craft and I still work on different aspects of being a musician, but it's like, well, that's what this is for now, and it's not going to sound, maybe it will for somebody else have the payoff that I feel when I listen to my heroes,
right?
But it doesn't for me because I wrote it,
right? And that's what you never know. And it's funny that you're saying that because that album, that jazz record that I did, where I decided now I want to be a producer, and I kind of basically like when the album came out, I didn't want to be a bass player band leader.
Okay.
I wasn't really that interested.
What was the nature of the record? So you were a band leader, bass player on the record. Is it like quartet, quintet?
It was basically a quartet with two trios, two different rhythm sections.
Okay.
Like kind of split in half.
Okay.
And most of the songs had all four, but there was a couple. There was a trio tune, and then there was also duo, just bass and piano.
Okay.
But most of it's all original music. It was one of those things where it's like, I need to do this.
Yeah,
I need to document this.
Yeah, I'm in that place right now. Like I got some tunes, and I just gotta get them off my brain.
Exactly.
And just get them out of my person and release it, and so I can move on.
Yeah, you need to have the release.
Yeah,
that's really important artistically, and like, you don't want to have regrets.
Sure. About
what you could have released or not.
Right, or just have the personal nagging of like, I'll get to it. Yeah, I'll get to it.
Right.
And then next thing, it's 5 years later.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I'll get to it.
I know.
And it's the same old thing. Like, it's always an I'll get to it.
Well, that's how I feel about I've got to do a solo bass record at some point.
Okay.
But that's like, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet, but that's definitely
so what does that mean?
In the pike.
So just solo? Like those Dave Holland records where it's just him?
Yeah, I mean, just acoustic bass.
Yeah.
Actually, my idea for it, this is kind of giving it away, but that's okay, because I want to do a live show with it too. It's all improvised.
Okay.
The first tour I did in New York was with Dan Tepfer.
Okay.
Pianist. It was a trio gig. And he did a thing on that tour where, like, in the show, each member would have a chance to play something solo.
Okay.
Like, that would be a little moment.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. Mm-hmm. It was basically, I had to, get up there unplanned and play something on the bass.
How many, not to vibe you out, but I know for me, if, like, that worked last night, I'm going to start there tonight.
Oh, like what I would play.
Yeah, like how fresh was it from night to night? Because that's hard. That's hard to be that exposed and have a brand new idea.
I'm trying to remember. I said that, but we might not have done it on every show. I feel like we did it on maybe like 2 or 3. It was a week tour.
That actually kind of makes it better.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become just a show shtick.
Well, it's weird. I mean, for me, I might be different than other people, but I'm very comfortable improvising from nothing.
Okay.
Like, it's just, that's kind of who I am.
Okay.
And that's how I used to write, too, with jazz tunes that I would write. I would just usually start on the piano, but sometimes bass, and I would just improvise. Yeah. And then when I find something, then I, like, kind of marinate on that and try to develop the idea outward.
Where did that fluid nature come from in your musicianship? Was you exposed to really organic music growing up? Or did you grow up in a musical household where people would just sit in an instrument and go?
Well, I did grow up in a musical household. It was interesting. My mom's classical. Okay. She's a professor and player. Okay. Classical, really good pianist. My dad was kind of a self-taught guitarist and singer. Okay. So I did both. My mom got me taking lessons at a young age. Sure. And then my dad would make me play with his band, which is basically him and his buddy.
Yeah, of course.
And we play like a lot of blues and folk and rootsy music.
Okay.
I'm from Oklahoma.
Okay.
So like that was the vibe.
Yeah.
And then
That's a good disconnect though. Like to well-round you understand like music with a history and a tradition and a technical standard, but then you also understand like this is people music.
Yeah.
And those are both very good approaches.
You just like broke down my whole musical, like this is me. That's pretty on point because I'm very studied. Like I have 2 music degrees. I was started taking lessons at a young age.
Right.
Like theory came naturally to me. I learned my scales and all that really quick.
Right.
But the other side of it, I guess it came from starting with the band mentality and learning songs and hearing that music in the house.
Okay.
I would hear both. Like I remember, Muddy Waters albums, Robert Johnson, the Hendrix Blues album.
Okay.
A solo Robbie Robertson album, the cat from the band.
Yeah.
The band too, like that's kind of music my dad had. And then, my mom had a lot of classical.
Right.
And jazz started to sneak in there.
Okay.
Someone got my dad like a Pat Metheny album.
Okay.
Or he had several Pat Metheny albums and then a Thelonious Monk album.
Okay.
So those started to creep in and, it kind of came together and jazz really became kind of like the ultimate pursuit at a certain point because I went through like the rock phase.
Sure.
And I was playing drums first. That was my first instrument. So I did all those lessons on drums and mallets. And then by the time I kind of got more interested in jazz, I started to really listen to the bass more. There's the Pat Metheny trio album with Dave Holland and Roy Haynes.
Timeless. I love that record. Yeah.
It's so good. So that was like one of the ones I was like, oh, I was really starting to hear the bass more, not just the drums.
Right.
And that was that kind of sent me off, and I made the switch to bass in high school. But so the organic thing I think was happening at the same time as I was doing the school stuff. Because, when I was in the rock band playing drums and before I really switched fully to bass, like we were playing Hendrix stuff and Zeppelin, but we were improvising for like hours at a time.
Okay, so there's a jam band quality to it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got used to that.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
And I
mean, at that age and at that point in your musical life, that's like the infancy. So whatever you're, like what is it? Like the first 5 years of a child's life is really who they're going to be. The
Sets
rest
it
of
out.
yeah.
And
so same thing. I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before, like the things I was exposed to and doing in my first few years of playing, like I still chased the rest of my career.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
It's like that's who I'm going to be in different versions.
Yeah. It's so huge.
It's crazy. Which now leads me to like I get into developmental psychology. Because understanding that about the musical thing and about a personal thing, and I'm fascinated by psychology.
My dad is a psychologist, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man, it's fascinating. I mean, to a point. I'm sure if I studied it in school, I'd hate it.
Yeah.
School has that effect. But yeah, like I'm really interested in that and how it relates to the musician because like that, like the upbringing in the house and then those first few years where you finally have an instrument in your hand is going to be you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Wow. This is like a second tarot reading. Yeah. I'm like, you're saying all this stuff. I'm like thinking about my own, like the juxtaposition of the, the like formal side and the organic thing. And it's like, it's been so apparent. And I'm like really seeing it. Even
how is it displayed in your production? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what the interesting part is. So like when I got to that point producing after I'd been playing for years and improvising and also learning songs and doing things that were very challenging in music. Yeah. What was challenging to me about the production was technology. I'm not really a technology type person. Yeah. And
like with all the plugins and stuff and like different compressors and all the things you can do with reverb and
all of it. Drum programming, like learning programs. Like I have a ton of stuff in here now. And like that's what I do is I'll like learn a new thing.
Yeah.
A device and a tool.
Sure.
Of you. But what's interesting is like what it's really about is you sit in a room with someone and do a writing session, a co-writing session. It's improvised.
Right.
You have to be in the moment.
Sure.
So that part has to come into play along with the other side, which is maybe a little more analytical or thinking like, what plugin or what thing could I use to make this sound the way I'm hearing it in my head?
Sure.
Right. So when you marry those together, hopefully you have something that you really that completes the vision of the song or the project, whatever you're working on.
Sure.
But it really is. I didn't ever think about it that way. That it would be kind of a marriage of both. And the improvising side, I'm still getting used to like doing that. Like doing a writing session, it's kind of anxiety producing, especially if you don't know the person.
It's easier to show up to a gig and improvise, isn't it?
Yeah. If I show up with my bass and
here, these are the charts, great. Like that part's easy, but to sit down and like, all right, well, what do you want to do?
I know.
Yeah, like I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, that doesn't answer it. Like,
but I mean, yeah, you're essentially making something out of nothing.
Sure.
And but that's what I used to do on my own. If I pick up the bass or any instrument and just make something. This is more to the heart of the challenge of producing is like organizing your thoughts.
Okay.
Right. So you can make up anything. You can make up a beat or a chord progression, but how are you going to organize it in a way that like makes sense for a listener? Tells a story, sure. Or like whatever vibe you're trying to give off.
Now, how much of as a bass player and a studied bass player, you learn from the records, you transcribe, you analyze the bass lines, whatever. How much of that have you done with production, where you like really take a producer you dig and like the equivalent of transcribing and just like break it all the way down, decode it, just to learn some tools. The way I do that, and I've kind of been this way all my life, is I'm more of a sponge type person. Okay.
Like I did transcribing in my time, but I was more the type of person that would like play along with records and like pick up the vibe, the feeling.
Sure.
I'm like a real feel intuition type player.
Yeah.
So with production, I listen with that same kind of critical and detailed ear and kind of like do my best to sort of like find whatever vibe or like sound I'm trying to do that may sound like another song.
Sure.
But I've never really sat down and tried to say, I'm going to copy this and learn how to do that. I think there would be a lot of benefit out of it, but I think another part of me is maybe a little afraid. Like, I don't want to get boxed into like having this particular, and honestly, I don't like one of the people that impresses me the most is one of the producers for Kendrick Lamar, Soundwave.
Okay.
And he was just part of a really cool side project, this band called Red Hearse, which is with Jack Antonoff, who's the cat from Bleachers, like this indie rock band, and he's kind of producing a lot now too. Anyway, they made this record with the vocalist Sam Dew, and the drum production on that is just mind-blowing to me.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd
love to hear it.
So, but half of that comes down to sounds, like the literal choices you're using, the samples,
sure,
and then also your ideas. And you can't
in
have
the part or just sonic design.
Both.
I mean both, yeah.
Yeah, like the rhythm and like how the sounds coalesce in that rhythm, and then sonically how they're treated, which we don't know. Maybe he did some of that when they're making it, or maybe it was half of it was done by the engineer.
Sure.
So like I can't have his ideas because it's not me.
Sure.
But if I really do try to pay attention to sonic things now, way more than I did before.
Yeah.
You know, like just the sound of like Raphael Sadiq's album, like the sound of the guitar or the bass. Like, how is he getting such a punchy, thick bass sound? It sounds like it's compressed for sure, but it's not like over compressed. You know, all those thoughts go on when I'm listening, and I'm also like feeling the vibe of the song.
Yeah.
So it's
It's hard for me to not connect with sonics because that's the nature of this whole thing, music. But to listen to a record and spend that much time on sonics, I think I nerd out on parts.
Yeah, yeah.
And how it's all connected, part-wise. That's my thing. And like when something will come in or when something will dip out, and like how the whole arc will be told through this addition and subtraction.
That's
and like what's really buried in there.
Right.
Like there's some
the details.
I think it's Human Nature, and I was listening to Human Nature one time with earbuds, and I'd heard the song 1,000 times, I think it's human nature. But then I start hearing these chimes that follow the melody. I'm like, what the hell? I never heard those. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now, then I would purposely like take the buds out and go play it on the speakers. I'm listening for them, so I heard them. But if I don't listen for them, there's just like this little sparkle on the melody that you just kind of feel.
Yeah, it's all part of one.
That's amazing to me.
I think that stuff is equally as important.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's like that's what, when you talk about a producer or a song, a production, it's like it's everything. It's the parts, it's the writing, it's the melody. It's what does come in and out, which is arrangement. Right? Which I know you do arranging.
Yeah.
So it's like that's, and what's fun, I mean, the traditional role of a producer is more about that.
Right.
Is those big picture things.
Yeah.
And really hearing the arc from beat one to the end of the song, and like what does come in and grab you, and then leave space for it to happen again or not. Those things are really fun. Like,
how has this impacted the way you play the bass now?
I think I have maybe even more of an awareness of the bigger picture.
Sure.
Which I always try to have that.
Yeah.
No matter the style. I was playing jazz, playing with like Sullivan Fortner, or I'm playing Lisa Fisher. I always try to step out of myself, and hear
it as a total,
as a whole.
I remember that epiphany moment when I was like 20 or 22, maybe. Like, I think I was reading Effortless Mastery at the time, and then it's like, like basically you hear it like you're listening to a record, but you can make decisions within it. So there's kind of this, you're on both sides of the coin, listening as if you're in, just listening to the band, but being able to contribute as if. Well, I mean, because you're in the band. So it's that both mindsets, being like right in it, but then being completely outside of it, all in real time.
Yeah, it's a trip.
And it's exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, you can't get too much in your head when doing that. Like, or you making the effort to like, I got to hear the big picture, and then you kind of lose yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't know what everybody's process is, but it's like just relaxing into that. And hopefully playing with people that you trust and there's no babysit quality.
Yeah.
Maybe they have to babysit me. So I'm not saying I have to babysit. I think God damn it, now I got to babysit Ryan.
He's doing this thing again. I know.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big moment for me. I still have to check in with myself on gigs, like make sure I get to that place, because it's not autopilot.
Yeah, and I think it definitely is easier when you know the people you're working with. I mean, I happen to have been in a lot of band situations, playing with the same people for like long periods of time.
That can be great.
It can be great. On
if everybody's bringing creative ideas and within the context of keeping the music for its purpose.
Yeah.
And falling in line with whatever the vision of that music is. But looking for new corners all the time is so much fun.
That's one thing like I always do, and if I don't do it, I go crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like often, back to the tarot thing, is like thinking about the next thing.
Sure.
A little too much.
Right.
So, but on I guess on a more positive tip, like bringing something exciting to the music every night that doesn't take away from the music is like that's a big goal.
Yeah.
Right? To like always feel fresh when you're playing it.
Sure.
But a lot of things go into that. As we know, when you're on tour, if you're playing a show, it's like the sound has to be right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the sound of the room, the vibe of the crowd.
Right.
And then it goes back to like getting
everybody's kind of mood. Like if there's like a funky mood backstage or wherever, then you're in it.
Yep.
And then it's just like And
how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And like as a bass player, I would say, any younger people out there, like as much as you can focus on the parts and the pocket and the groove.
Sure.
Like those are things I very much believe in. I mean, I think any player should.
Right.
But like when you can hone in on that and like get your mind in the right state that needs to be, then maybe you can kind of get out of a funk and like then allow yourself to say, I'm going to try something new here, or I'm going to like slam this effect on at this spot. I do it all the time.
Okay.
Like always changing shit up.
Okay. Yeah. And everybody's cool with it? Like, yeah.
I mean, Yeah, it's not for every musical situation.
Sure.
I'm speaking mostly about Lisa Fisher's band, and
okay.
she's very free in how she sings and approaches things.
Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still doing it. We have a show at SF Jazz actually this weekend.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
First time there. So, and often you want to parlay to the leader or the, she's the singer. Bass supports vocals.
Sure.
That's another reason I love playing with singers.
Yeah.
It's like how that interaction works.
Yeah.
And I know that she encourages the searching quality.
And so that means she's probably going to go with you. Like she's not. I like playing with those singers. The singers that put their part of the music, the melody, obviously. They display it in such a way that you just know what to play underneath them. Yeah. You know where to fill the space. You know where to lay out of this space. Like they dictate your line.
Right. Instead of you having to
push them or like try to get more out of them. Like they're kind of getting more out of you.
Yeah.
I love that. And then, but they're also like cool with you drop something new. They're like, okay, great. Now let's go over here.
Yeah.
And that's. I feel like a mature musician on any instrument will do that. It's not limited to singers, but I really like playing with singers that debunk all the singer jokes.
Right.
You know, they're like,
oh man,
you're a musician, and your instrument is your voice.
Exactly.
You're not like a quintessential like, got to go play with this singer.
No, and a real singer will show you that.
Yeah.
You know, how they lead, how they perform, and
right.
I can't really say enough about her because she's kind of like the greatest singer I've ever been able to be around.
Oh, killing.
And a lot of other singers that have come to the show, really bowed down to her, I guess, just because she was a background vocalist for so long.
Okay.
And then people getting to really hear her in a new setting as a solo artist again has been great for her career. Like,
I don't know that much about her.
So, yeah, Lisa, a quick story is that she started with Luther Vandross.
Okay.
She did a bunch of big background gigs, everything from Tina Turner, Nine Inch Nails. And then when she landed the Rolling Stones, she's with them since the late 80s.
Oh, wow.
Until just a couple years ago.
Okay.
She, took her leave and decided to do this full time.
Yeah.
So, but she also had a small solo career in there. She had one album. Okay. And one song from that album won a Grammy, How Can I Ease the Pain?
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was basically an R&B record. So she has a huge fan base for that alone. And then people who know her from Luther or people who know her from the rock side. Yeah. But she's also done she did something with Yo-Yo Ma a couple years ago and Gregory Porter. So she's all over the place.
Right.
Like she's
one of those.
So versatile.
Yeah. Right.
People can finally hear her as who she is.
That's great.
And then this band is super weird and funky and different.
What's the nature of that music then? So coming from both her thing, both the R&B and the rock world, is it? I'm assuming it's kind of an R&B jazz crossover record, with some experimental edge.
Well, we haven't done a record.
Okay.
But the band, hopefully we finally do one. Everybody keeps asking.
Yeah.
But, the vibe is kind of like a lot of rearrangements of covers.
Okay.
And some of her originals. And the way I like to describe it is an improviser's approach to those styles. But the arrangements are also specific to the MD. Who he is J.C. Maillard. He's from Guadeloupe. Okay. So he grew up in this Caribbean setting, and he also is very studied in African music and some flamenco.
Oh, wow.
He's really diverse.
Okay.
And then he lived in France for a long time where he met the drummer. Drummer's French.
Okay.
Terry Arpino. And so, you have them two, and then me and Lisa are the Americans.
Yeah.
She's from Brooklyn. I'm from Oklahoma.
Okay.
And so it's a real strange
United
gumbo.
Nations.
Yeah.
Right.
But JC's arrangements are really beautiful and crafted and interesting harmonically and rhythmically. He's got a lot of instruments on stage.
Okay.
So we make a lot of noise for people.
Sure.
And it's kind of like this sort of a wall of sound, but in a nuanced way.
Okay.
It's
interesting.
You just got to come to a show.
Yeah, that'd be great. What are the LA dates?
We did some in June.
Okay.
We usually do Catalinas, so we did
nice.
Catalinas again.
Cool.
Hopefully we'll do another one. Like,
yeah.
I think it would be great if we could find a different venue to play here. And I don't know what that is.
I don't know what, like, what would be the, it sounds like something in between, like, you know, Catalina's, in between that and the bowl.
Yeah.
Like, where would that be? Yeah,
Well,
I ask rhetorically because I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, we have played other places here. We played the Broad Stage once.
Okay.
And we did play the bowl opening up for someone. But it's kind of the thing. They do Catalinas, I think, mostly because you can do multiple nights.
Yeah.
Because they're still East Coast based. I moved out here, but they're all based in New York. So it's like, you know, you're managing a tour. You got to make it worth it.
Right.
So hopefully another place pops up where we can maybe even do just like 2 nights in a row or 3.
Sure.
Like, it doesn't have to be 4. It's just Catalinas. It's like the sound is always problematic, and there's some other issues with it. But, you know, we do our best.
Yeah, that's it. So in New York, you went to school there. There's a good chance I met you at a jam session there.
Yeah?
Like, at the International House.
Oh, man.
I was out there for like a few days, and I was hanging with a bass player who was going to Manhattan School of Music.
Okay.
At the time, and he took me to the jam, I think 2 nights. I can't remember.
Yeah.
There's a good chance I met you there.
I definitely used to go there.
Yeah.
I love talking about old New York days. It feels so nostalgic at this point. I feel so old. Like,
man, there was a burger place right around the corner called Toast.
Oh, yeah.
That I ate there like 4 times in 3 days. Like, I loved that place.
Oh, dude, that was the hang.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to Manhattan School of Music. I went to City College.
Right. I was trying to go there, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got accepted, but my wife and I just didn't have the bread to move to New York. But Patitucci was he was a super sweetheart and like would spend hours on the phone. Not at once, but there were 2 like really lengthy conversations.
Oh yeah.
Telling me about like how him and Sachi got hooked up with the place they got hooked up with and who to hit up for, how to work the thing, and he's sweetheart.
So sweet.
Yeah.
He's been such an amazing like presence in my life.
Yeah.
So I was at City College, but I had a lot of friends, or a decent amount of friends at MSM. Okay. So I had went to Banff the summer before.
What's that?
The Banff Canadian Jazz like workshop.
Okay.
It's like in Alberta area, West Canada. There's like a 3-week workshop that they do. It's been going on for a long time. Like Dave Holland used to run it.
Oh, wow.
And Dave Douglas was running it when I was there.
Okay.
But there's a lot of cats there who moved to New York or from there.
Yeah.
When I went that summer, and then I moved. And so I would do sessions at Manhattan School of Music, and we would go hang at Toast till wee hours.
Yeah.
Many late nights. And go to International House and just like totally explode the jam sessions, Just
right.
Like, there's a lot of, all the German cats were there. Mm-hmm. I remember. Yeah. And because there's a lot of foreigners at both those schools, at City College, and I remember playing with a lot of them. Yeah. So I bet we were probably there at the same time.
It's possible. I mean, his name was Chris, and he was introducing me to like so many people,
Bass player?
Yeah, Chris Finet. Okay. He's a classical guy at MSM, but like he could play jazz really well. Wow. Now he runs a program at the NAU in Phoenix. In Arizona, Northern Arizona University. Yeah. Yeah, great player. So there's a chance of that. When you were out there going to school, were you working? Like, what gigs were you doing while you're going to school? Jazz gigs? Like, were you immersing yourself in the New York jazz culture?
Yeah, that's what I moved there for. Yeah. I mean, that's always, like, my backbone as a musician. Like, that was kind of my career goal, too, at the time.
At what point was it like, maybe not? Like, I had one where it's like, okay, maybe no. And I don't know how to describe it. You almost have to grieve the idea a little bit. Just like,
I definitely did.
Yeah, just like, I don't know. I wasn't jazzy enough to really do that thing where that's all I do. Yeah. Because I feel like to really be there, that's your thing.
That's your thing. Well, I think I grieved the idea more in the sense that I was like, it was a realization that I'm meant for other things.
Sure.
Besides just this.
Yeah.
Because for me, I got close to the place I wanted to. I wouldn't say all the way. Because there were like definitely people I wanted to play with in New York.
Okay.
And I didn't get to. But there's a lot of people that I did. And I started to see my path. And I was like, okay, that's more what it's going to be. That's cool.
But through playing with those people, did that scratch the itch enough to be like, okay, kind of a little bit of a check?
Yeah.
Well, I did it. I don't need to keep pursuing this because then it's just this. It's more of this.
Yeah, I mean, the diversity element is very important for me as a person and a musician to be able to do different things. And I always had my foot in other camps the whole time, pretty much. But when I moved there, I mean, that's what I wanted to do. Sure. And some of the first gigs I got were like hotel gigs. Okay. You know, like there's this infamous singer named Joni Paladin. She did like a Times Square Renaissance hotel gig, and this place in the Village. What's the name? It's like, were these like residencies?
Like you were there so many nights a week?
Probably like every weekend, or you know, like twice a week, maybe more. Okay. You know, different restaurants, just background gigs at first, just playing tunes with people. I mean, that's where I met Dan Tepfer to do the trio tour with him and Richie Barchet. It was on one of these crappy little singer gigs at a hotel. Sure. And so you know, that's how New York is. It's like you never know who you're going to meet.
It's a little bit. I mean, it's out here too. Like,
it depends where you go. I guess
yeah. So, I mean, some scenes it's like definitely not that, but some scenes it's like you end up just kind of playing with some dudes. Yeah. Unexpectedly. Right. And it's just you're just working, and everybody's just working.
Well, that's the beauty of a big city. Yeah. You know, and what did I hear not that long ago? It's like you have to go to the city that has the work you want to do. Sure. You know, and at the time it was New York, and yeah, man, I did so many different things there. Yeah. It was like I was doing avant-garde gigs. I was doing standards. I ended up doing a lot of like original music gigs, you know, like modern. Right. I feel like if there was a percentage, I probably did most of that.
Was that due to like major jazz schools all being out there, and then like all the students putting together groups and writing a lot? And
a mix of that, yeah. Yeah. For sure. I did some stuff through school. And like I said, not just City College, because City College is a smaller program than the others. So
yeah, I was mentioning just like all the students from all the schools. So you got like dudes from New School and Juilliard. Like everybody's got a band. Like every alto player and tenor player and piano player, like they got a band.
I know. They got a band, and you're going to do their gig in Brooklyn, and it's going to pay like $20. It's going to be, you know, door.
The cab costs $40.
Yeah. Oh, man, no. I wouldn't take no cabs back then. Only train, carrying the amp. Oh, it's brutal. So
what was the get-around scene? What was your rig?
So
you got the bass and a wheel, and then what was your amp?
I got the bass. I had the classic GK.
Okay, sure.
Like the square.
Man, those things are workhorses.
They are, but like I think what happened? At some point I was carrying mine in a suitcase, so I wouldn't have to just carry it like that and the bass by itself. But you know, you're on New York City streets. You're rolling both. You get some big ass cracks in the sidewalk. Shit falls down. I had like one speaker that wasn't working in that thing, or it was like distorted. So I at some point, you know, I switched over. I'm an Aguilar guy. Okay. But I think by that point I was doing less gigs in the city where I would say yes to. Sure. Like there was a certain point, like you said, you kind of asked, like, you know, when I kind of let that dream go. Yeah. It was kind of basically because I got the Lisa gig, because it was the most reliable like gig I'd ever had. Okay. Like the most, you know, comfortable. Right. Like I could really live off of it. Yeah. And I'd already made the decision to get into producing. Okay. And then if you add the fact that I felt like the jazz scene was so insular and kind of like a black hole, and also could be a little juvenile. I just started like the hang and the
because juvenile in the way that their approach to music?
No. Okay. Sorry. I didn't mean to be too like critical there. I think like the people, you know, okay. So I feel like a lot, like for example, I would go to a jazz show after some years later, like I had the Lisa gig, and then I would see people and just the way people would talk and act, it's like they hadn't grown up yet. You know, it's still this kind of like the New York grind of like, go play, like till the wee hours and like take the train home, and just that grind, and like, you know, as you grow up, you want more.
Right.
And maybe it's the fact that I was in a long relationship, a steady relationship. I was going to get married. All those things. So
you're like you're looking down the tunnel of adulthood.
Yeah.
You know, and like where they're maybe looking through the lens of like the romanticism of that aspect of the jazz culture, where you stay out till 4 or 5, whatever.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with that. I might have been in that place if I hadn't met my wife. I might have still been a bachelor, like working late night gigs, but I think just it was an age thing. You know, I just got to an age where I was like, okay, I don't necessarily have to do this,
right,
and I don't necessarily want to do this, but I would still like. One of the people I got close with was Sullivan Fortner and Fred Hirsch a little bit too.
Okay,
if one of them called me,
well, yeah,
it's a no-brainer. But that's based on more the relationship.
Sure.
Plus the music.
Right.
So that became more important. It's not just like, I'm going to do every gig I possibly can.
Right.
There's years of that in New York.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, at some point, you make some decisions to like.
I think so. Yeah. And you kind of not pick a lane, but just trim the fat, because you realize, like, I've gone through it in LA. I was just like, I've done this. Yeah. Like, okay, I can keep doing it, and I know where it goes, which is more of just doing this.
Sure.
You know, it's like, no, like I'm getting burnt out on doing that.
Right, you can get burnt out.
It doesn't go anywhere. It's just the wheel just keeps turning.
Yeah.
And like that's no way to live. You know, I don't want to be doing that in 10 years.
Yeah, you don't want to burn yourself out.
Right. Absolutely. Which I have done multiple times here.
Yeah.
I mean, this podcast is the response to being burnt out.
That's
like,
cool.
Like, I got burnt out and like, nah, screw it. Like, I got to do something else.
Something different.
Yeah. And
That's
I was
great, man.
On another episode, I was talking to this, he's the editor for Bass Player Magazine. And we were talking about self-care and all this. Yeah. And then we started talking about career care, where like you have to just kind of have an outlet that keeps you sane. Like if you're gonna be a working guy, you know, wherever you're at, like you're in town and you're working and you're teaching and you're doing all that, there's got to be some aspect of career care. Otherwise, you will go insane in no time.
Sure.
Like it's just you get dark, and then like the darkness. You know, everybody knows you're going to be dark after a while. Yeah. You know, like, well, that's going to hurt
like,
you.
Oh, this is his vibe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be just dark and, you know, crotchety all the time. And then, like, the darkness just deepens, and you just get burnt out.
Man, it's so important. It's for some reason, it crossed my mind even before you were going to come today. I was thinking about it yesterday, about the whole, like, mental, spiritual health. And, you know, everybody uses the term self-care. And
do you have any kind of regimen that you go to for those kinds of things, whether it's a hiking or a meditative?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's probably it's got to be one of the main reasons people move here. Right? Okay. Because like you can exercise pretty much year round.
Sure. I mean, the weather's ridiculous.
Issues. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I went to the gym all the time in New York, and sometimes I'd run in like 30, 20 degree weather.
Oh, man.
But dude, that's like not that enjoyable.
No.
So,
no, you have to run just to stay warm. So really, you just went outside and it turned into a workout.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, but it was funny because in our apartment it was actually really warm too, because it was like, you know, apartment heat, or you couldn't control it. So our windows were open like year round.
Oh man,
isn't that funny?
Okay.
Unless, you know, you had the AC on in the summer.
Right.
But no, I do like that about here, and I enjoy the weather and that the heat is drier, and I make it a point. I really go to the gym pretty often, almost every other day. Yeah. And we've turned into real beach people. I mean, we loved the beach before. Nice. But we're not that far from Marina Del Rey, so that's kind of our spot. Right. And so those are things I'll do. And for me, the ocean has become like a big.
The ocean, it's a powerful
thing to just refresh you, to flip the switch.
It's such a force. Like, I went to go look at a place on Saturday in Venice that I might be moving to. And
nice.
And I was talking to a producer friend of mine the other night who had lived in Venice at one point. And we were talking about that, just the nature and kind of the mental clarity that comes with that, living that close to the ocean. Yeah. Not only because of just beach culture, but, you know, you can super easy access to the ocean. I mean, I live in North Hollywood now. That's 20 minutes from the beach. I have, you know, the majority of America does not have the access I have to the beach at all. You know, It's either coast and you have access. But Southern California beaches are amazing, and I have I can go there anytime I want, half hour.
Yeah.
But this, like being able to walk there, and then my friend Dan put it into perspective. He's like, man, you're at the ocean, and you're standing there, and your feet are in the ocean. You are now connected to everything in the world. He's like, the water connects everything. It connects all the continents. So now you're a part of that water, and you're connected to the whole thing. And he's like, man, it's powerful, and I have to be around it.
Maybe that's what it is.
As much as possible. And that was a drastically different approach than I had. I had this kind of anxiety-ridden thing about the ocean. Like, man, it's just this massive presence, and like there's a whole world down there that I don't understand, and that freaks me out because I don't know what's going on down there, and I don't want to get in it. But I liked his perspective, and the more I thought about it that way, I'm like, yeah, man, like it is true. Like at that point, it really is this kind of centering of who you are in the world. And that is a beautiful thing about Los Angeles or living anywhere near the ocean is you have regular access to that and just kind of come to terms with who you are within yourself and within the world. I mean, and standing at the forefront of something so powerful is like all your problems aren't as big of a deal anymore.
Exactly.
Like it's so much bigger than you, but you're a part of it all at the same time. And in kind of, I guess, a similar sense, I've never thought about it till right now. It's like we talked about listening. Like you're a part of it, but it's so much bigger than you. Yeah, so it's really powerful.
Good. Wow, that's good. That's a good connection there. It's a good metaphor. Yeah, I think that like the way your friend said it, that's really cool. I haven't heard it said that way. And it's kind of like a duh. Like it is. That's water. Yeah. It's like connected everywhere. So.
Right, and we're like what? We're 70% water.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all very, like it's powerful. And like thinking about it that way.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Muscle Shoals documentary?
Is that the one I haven't seen? I think that's the one I have not seen. There's so many of those. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah. I watched that one a few years ago, and they were talking about that, like down in Alabama, and the power of this water that went through Muscle Shoals, and like how that just had this presence, and how that infected the music.
Was it what river? Is it a river that goes?
Know, maybe a lake or a swamp. I don't know, wherever it is in Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
I have to look that up. I feel like I should know.
Yeah, I feel like I should too, since I brought it up. Like I should be more informed.
Podcast fail.
I'll edit that part out. Just like punch in
your Wikipedia like reading. Man.
Exactly.
But environment, that's it.
I think that's huge, man, and I'm really captivated by that. The geographic, how that shapes the sound, Like, for instance, like I'm sure you can hear dudes in L.A. trying to cop the New York sound. Mm-hmm. Impossible.
Yeah. Because
they're not confronted with that weather, those people reacting to that weather, like all that.
Yeah.
Where everything here is just relaxed because it's,
different
76 degrees all year round. It's a feel-good town. And so the music that comes out of here is feel-good music, and it's groove-based and all that. It's not this...
doesn't quite have the edge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's the history of Los Angeles isn't the history of New York, and I think all those things come into play, like the architecture.
Oh, definitely.
And the what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the academia, so to speak. That's not the word I'm looking for, but like the headiness of what's around. We're not confronted with it the same way, and I have.
You're not hit over the head with it like people are in New York, right? Because it's like a pressure cooker, right? Yeah, that's what people say.
And like I like the New York sound. I don't like people who don't live in New York trying to cop the New York sound.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I really think that people should kind of relax into their space and make it sound like that.
Well, I think that no matter what you're doing, you should make music with, the people you're making it with in the moment, and not trying to do anything.
Right.
Not try to be L.A. or New York. And I mean, what's funny, you're saying all this, and I'm thinking about Oklahoma.
Okay.
Because when I went from Oklahoma to New York, the difference in the swing, I can't even begin to tell you. Have you ever thought about that? Like areas outside of these two cities. Of course, we know New York is such the shape of like what we know.
Sure.
That edge. I remember being on like a session and getting totally burned by a drummer. It was just like he was so on top and cutting and like metric modulations.
Sure.
But I mean, we were shedding some of that too in Oklahoma. But when it comes down to like 4/4 swinging,
but the feel of
it's very different.
Yeah.
It was like chunky. You know, and
right.
it's
I
very
know what you mean by that.
Wide open spaces there, not too dissimilar from LA in a way. To me, they're closer. If I were to compare all three,
sure.
You know, it's like big open skies and all this, and of course the history of blues there and like
in Oklahoma.
Those kind of things that shape the sound. So I remember noticing that when I got to New York, I was like, oh man, it's a different vibe. Like,
so what's kind of like, so I'm from Phoenix, and I don't know if they really have a musical identity. I think Phoenix is more or less suburbs.
Yeah.
And so like the nature of suburbs is what Phoenix would sound like, I think. You know, like you can hear individuals' influences. Yeah. You know, and there's a lot of good musicians there. But I can't say that the city has an identity as a sound.
Yeah, I mean, that's always tricky because, you know, the smaller cities, the scenes are smaller.
Right.
So obviously there's less influence on each other because there's not as many people.
Right.
So, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. And I'm trying to think about, like, other areas, you know. You can definitely dissect it. You think about the Chicago music and history and, like, also some more of the southern places, like, you know, Muscle Shoals and Memphis, and you know, when you talk, especially you talk about soul music and in Detroit, right? You know, so you have like a lot of different vibes.
Yeah.
But it's pretty interesting. You start, and also what comes to mind? New Orleans.
Yeah, Memphis.
Because I play with a few people from New Orleans.
Okay.
And that's very.
They got their own thing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. I love that.
And it's all beautiful.
Yeah.
I
love that it's because then it's almost like you've traveled there when you've experienced the music as it should be experienced.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of traveling at all, but you really sit with records and really absorb those feels. It's like you traveled.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't obviously experience architecture or the specific history of the land and walk the same streets or eat the food and any of that, but it's such a window into all that, and you can absorb it in a really specific way.
Yeah.
That I'm into.
Yeah.
That being said, I've never really done it with Cuban music.
With Cuban?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that's one of the things I don't sing. Not a great Latin player. Yeah. Out of respect for both. Singing I'm not interested in, but Latin music and specifically Cuban, like if I think about how much of a study playing jazz is.
Yeah.
Like Cuban has the same.
Just as much.
Yeah. And I can't do both at the same time and do each one well. So like I'm going to start just with jazz over here. Man. And then maybe at some point, if I think that that's ever good enough, which I'm sure I won't, I'll start to dip into how to deal with this clave.
Man, that's a whole nother world. I'm kind of similar. That's an area of like, you know, weakness for me. Mm-hmm. But I remember like being thrown in the fire in New York and doing some random gigs, like, and more background gigs. So, but it was like a Cuban drummer, and like the pianist was Dominican.
Okay.
And I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
But I know that, like, you know, for example, the scene. What's the place in like Midtown? It's like a place to go hear Cuban music in New York.
Oh no.
The name will come back to me. Guantanamera.
Okay.
You ever heard of that?
Nuh-uh.
So that's pretty wild.
That's the full-on...
It's like the real deal.
Okay.
But they're also doing, I guess, a more modern form, someone told me, called something with like Tinga. Yeah, so it's kind of like a modernized, like...
Is that like a sub-genre?
Yeah, it's kind of like a more complex way of playing classic Cuban music, apparently. Okay. But yeah, I agree. Like things like that's its own study. You could probably spend a lifetime on it.
Sure.
And
I mean, dudes have.
Yeah. I mean, that's where you could really start to feel lost as a musician when you're like, oh, there's so many styles. I got to learn this. I got to learn that.
Right.
Like.
Yeah.
I go through that a little bit.
Oh,
sometimes,
me too. Because it's like you could know like maybe some whatever, some obscure tunes that are still within the realm of standards and stuff. And I'm not great. I don't know like all the tunes, you know.
Me neither.
Right, but then there's always going to be like some Rolling Stones tune. I'm going to be like, what? No, I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
You know, or some old, you know, like I was on a gig about a month ago and this dude was hipping me to the Stevie Wonder tune that I should completely know.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I've never heard it. It is just like, damn it.
I know.
There's always so much.
I know. It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much. And each world is its own study. I mean, you go down the Motown rabbit hole, that's a thing.
Yeah.
You go down the Cuban thing or the jazz thing, like they're all their own. And those two like have a level of sophistication to them.
Sure.
That it takes more study because you're studying the concepts of what put it together and how to manipulate it instead of just knowing all the Stevie records.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything can be looked at from different points of view too.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at it from studying the information in the music or studying like the recordings, like how they're put together, you know, the sound of everything, arrangements, etc. So like it's always different viewpoints, but I mean, definitely can't let ourselves go crazy over like trying to know everything.
No.
I know for me, because I do know people like that who are real libraries of music.
Okay.
And I've never been that type of person, which is probably why I've often done more original music gigs as a bass player, because I like to feed that a little more. But I still have a lot of respect for so many different kinds of music. I just don't have the time to like learn all these songs.
I know, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It sounds so lame, but
no, because like if you do, let's say, you know, you learn whatever genre, you learn all the major tunes you need to know. Okay, well, you have to be playing that all the time.
Right.
Otherwise,
you have to practice that.
You have to keep that up. Otherwise, there's going to be like atrophy. Then it's going to go out the.
It's going to go out the window.
Yeah, so like that's what. I mean, for me, that's what sucks with jazz sometimes. Is like you'll be learning tunes, and then next thing you know, you're not on a standards gig for long enough.
And you forget half of them.
Just like, oh, right, where's it go at the bridge?
Man.
Oh, okay, yeah, now I got it.
You know, one thing I have to say is that a positive experience being in LA is I got a church gig pretty quick.
Okay.
And this is like a gospel church gig. And I had never had one of those gigs, but I grew up kind of around musicians from the church in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So
but you weren't playing in a church.
I wasn't playing in
a
church like that. You know, more Baptist, traditional or whatever.
Okay.
Like playing traditional and modern gospel music.
Yeah.
But I was around it. I was exposed to it. And these guys were teaching me tons of chords, which I got a lot of my keyboard skills from them.
Oh, okay.
So all these things. And then I got here and I got this call. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I showed up. I was like, man, okay. Number one is like, as we all know, it's an ears gig, right? So like you learn songs for the service, and then
they send you links.
Yeah, you get the YouTube links, and then you show up, and like some of them may change. You might not do the same arrangements. The keys may change. You might not do the songs at all, and they're going to do some completely different songs. So you're really thrown into the fire in the same way you would be if you had to play a jazz gig and you didn't say have a real book or whatever, some charts to check the changes. And I say it's really helped me to not have as much anxiety about playing a jazz gig where I don't remember all the tunes anymore.
Right. It teaches you to rely on your ears.
Yes, which we all do, but sometimes we forget how powerful that skill is.
Yeah.
You know, I remember early on in my jazz, studies, like in Oklahoma, I got really good at reading charts and playing and improvising in the moment in a way that it didn't sound like I was reading.
Yeah.
But then I got to New York, and I was doing that at City College one day. It was Fred Hirsch masterclass.
Okay.
It's actually how we met. And he came up and took the chart away from me. We were playing A Foggy Day. It was just like, combo, like combo playing at a masterclass, very classic. And I kind of freaked out for a second, and then I just like let my ears do the work, and I found it and made it through.
Yeah.
And he used it as an example of the class. Mm-hmm. And I think coming back around to that now, that concept of like having been in the church and doing that a lot, especially the first like 4 to 6 months I was here, like just reminded me that, okay, you have this
Yeah.
We all do.
Sure.
We have this skill of using our ears, and you need to apply it in other ways.
Sure.
And not always try to rely on like having to know the music.
Right.
You know. So.
I've talked about it a lot, and me and a drummer in town talk about it a lot. That should be part of like music school curriculum. Is you got to go get a church gig.
Yeah.
Like you sign up for the class, and then they'll send you on a church gig basically, and like because you're gonna learn so much there that you can't learn anywhere else, and it's specifically the way those churches roll.
Yeah.
It's as you described. Like, you get 5 songs, maybe you play 2, maybe you play all 5 with the record arrangements, and there's gnarly unison lines, and
right.
so you have to practice.
You have to know it. You have just in case.
Right. You have to know it. You have to know the record, like the record, just in case they do that.
Yeah.
Or you have to just know like all of their standards that are just go-tos.
Yeah.
Because they have that, these go-to songs that they go to at different portions in the service.
Yeah. That's the hard part for me, is knowing the old stuff.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in church. I went to like an Episcopal church.
Okay.
You know, and so I wasn't learning.
Was that just like kind of modern Christian rock vibe?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't even rock. It was just like traditional hymns, like with a choir or organist. You know? So I didn't grow up with these kind of hymns.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like in the black church that you would hear.
Sure.
So like, sometimes I'm like, damn, like I wish I knew this, but
yeah.
You know. Also, those gigs really depend on the other musicians.
Yeah.
Keyboardist is usually somewhat of the leader.
Yeah.
So most of the times I was in this church, like they were great about giving me some signs or like really making it apparent what the bass note was. And those are the moments where you have to really be listening and be on it, like, and try to catch it.
Yeah.
And the other part about the other thing I would say about the church environment is like, the beautiful thing that happens when you're playing one of those songs and like it keeps going.
Yeah.
And it keeps going. And different things will happen.
Yeah.
You know, it'll come up to a fever point and it'll come back down.
Sure.
You know, or maybe they'll do a pedal thing and they're hitting all these diminished chords.
Mm-hmm.
So these different things that happen, and like the more you do that, you know, you start to get comfortable with like, okay, you know, I'm gonna be okay. I'll make it through, because I know different things that may happen in the music.
Sure.
And I think it prepares you for, you know, other situations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why you see church musicians at the top of every situation. I mean, that's what someone told me here. It's like in LA, pop, R&B, hip hop, all those things are mostly run by church cats.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I get it.
Right. It's the energy, and it's that kind of that language.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what the gig is, for the most part, like those are going to be the dudes on it.
Yeah.
And it's its own thing, and you can't get it from any other way except doing it. I don't think so. Like you don't get it from listening to those records.
No, you got to play it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be curious to know, you know, like in more of the pop situations, there's got to be some people who maybe haven't had the church experience, but they at least have the ears.
Sure.
Because it's like, I have jazz ears.
Right.
In a way, right? Like I came into the church situation, and that's what the drummer said. He's like, you're playing.
But those are still good ears.
They're still good ears.
Yeah.
Because he was like, you're making choices and bass note decisions that church cats wouldn't do.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't know that unless someone told me. Like, if you know,
I would be interested to know, like, you know, line 1 is church guy decision, and line 2 is jazz guy decision, and just see like,
I know.
Okay, he did this when the chords are moving that way, and then jazz guy did this.
I don't know how verbatim it is. But
no, but I'm curious what the difference is.
Well, I know one difference is that by nature, I probably have somewhat of a theoretical approach. Mm-hmm. So the same things that I do in jazz, the type of reharmonizations.
Sure.
Because I know the harmony.
You're going to use those tricks. So
they might not have the same ones in their bag. Yeah. They might be able to hear them, but they might not do them because they're used to doing other things. Yeah, yeah. It really depends on the musician too. I mean, I think about people like Derek Hodge and Thad Trebet, which are two of my favorite bass players of all time, like alive. Right. You know? And they both are heavy church dudes. Obviously, there's great videos on YouTube of them playing in church, and then all the other stuff we know. Yeah. I don't know if you know, but Thad has been subbing for Derek and Robert's group.
Oh no, I didn't know.
And Chris Dave's group.
Oh wow.
There's some really cool clips.
What's Derek up to? Just producing?
I don't know. He does all kinds of stuff these days. I feel like he's doing more producing and arranging.
Okay.
But I really like those two, also because of their approach to the bass and like how they approach music.
Yeah.
It's so creative to me. They have all this incredible like harmonic gifts, but then like the different ranges they choose to play in the bass.
Right.
It's like, there's like Chris Dave will put up some clips from his shows on his Instagram, and there's like one, and Thad Trebet is just playing all like in the upper register.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, this is so cool, because like everybody be down here.
Sure.
It's like, that's so dope. Like, it gives me ideas. Like,
yeah, I don't know if I can. Like, I've seen some stuff similar to that, and it always impresses me. But then I try to put myself in those shoes, and obviously, like, I wouldn't make that decision. And for some reason, like, those decisions aren't on my radar.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point these became an option to think like that. And I get really captivated with bass players I hear that make decisions that I think are great, but are so outside of kind of like the norm.
Yeah.
Pino is a big one
for
me. Like where he puts fills aren't like really kind of typically at phrase junctures, but they're everything.
Yeah, his like level of grace note, like mastery and rhythmic shit placement is just it's beyond.
Yeah.
He's really in his own category.
Yeah, I agree.
By the way, I'm going to see him with John Mayer Friday.
Oh man, I heard about that. I have a friend going. I didn't know it was him.
Yeah, he's in the band.
Okay.
He's pretty much, well, I don't know, always, but
yeah,
like
I didn't know what Mayer was up to. I've been listening to his newer records lately.
Yeah. Do you like it?
It's hard because I grew up with the old ones, and so those three main ones, Room for Squares, Heavier Things, and Continuum. One, I feel like they all are kind of birthed out of this same formula of songwriting. There's a coming of age song. There's a breakup song. There's a me feeling grounded. Who am I in the world song? This existential. They all have that on there, and then within that context, the writing style is very much kind of like a diary entry, or like a journal entry or something. It's very, very kind of inner dialogue based. And I don't hear that on the new records, and it's a really different thing, and it's hard for me to connect with this without trying to connect those two dots.
The old
like,
stuff.
Yeah, and trying to like kind of rectify this new material to the old material in some way, as if it's part of the same journey, which it's not necessarily is.
He's just developed. He's changed.
Yeah, and I'm trying to connect those, and so on initial listen, it sounds like a shell of John Mayer. And it's hard for me to connect with because it's like, all right, this guy's, there's the vocal phrasing, and then there's the guitar playing, and then there's the characteristics of John Mayer. But it's like, for some reason, it sounds like an imposter.
Weird. I didn't even really listen to the old stuff as much.
Okay.
I mean, I knew like the singles and popular songs that would be out somewhat, and I knew about Continuum for sure. It was a trio record.
Yeah.
But this stuff seems to me to be more universal. He's gotten to a place in his songwriting where all the kind of formulas and beauty of like architectural songwriting are there. Yeah. But it's a little more universal. Yeah, I think there's one song on there. What's it called? Blood of something. It's about his dad. There is some personal stuff in there.
Yeah, I remember hearing I think one or two, and I'm like, okay, it's still in there.
Yeah.
But
a little different, I guess.
Yeah, but then there's like the single on, I think it was the last record. I'm not exactly sure. Was it I Want to Be Your Man or something like that?
Yep.
Is that the name?
It's kind
of
a
tune?
Marvin style tune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the groove feels great. But then I'm checking in with the lyrics. I'm like, okay, it's not the same. Doesn't have the same quality to it for some reason.
It's funny.
It sounds like he phoned those in a little bit. And I'm not saying he did, and I'm nobody. It's just my opinion, and it's music, and we all have that.
Maybe he was trying to write more hit type stuff. possibly. I kind of like can't even be distracted by those thoughts because the production and the playing on that album is so ridiculous to me. Like it's like one of the most perfect recordings I've heard in a while.
On the newer stuff?
The whole newer stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Like everything. Like that song, you know, everything from the drum choices that Steve Jordan used, the sounds, the playing, like what happens section to section. Yeah. I get so into those details that like sometimes I forget to like listen to the lyrics. I mean, I definitely hearing them. Yeah. But I'm like, when the newer stuff came out, I was so enamored by the musicianship. Yeah. And like the production quality. Right. I was like, damn, this is so good.
Yeah, I heard that and I'm like, cool. And I'm like, I'll come back to that and really investigate it, but I need to know where he's coming from. Like, I need to kind of connect with him and see if I still can, because I'd put off listening to the newer stuff. Okay. Since Continuum.
You're really like an older fan of him.
I mean, I grew up listening to those records on reel.
Oh, crazy! Yeah.
And then especially Continuum, like that was a big record. I was listening to that all the time. Yeah. And then the live trio record. Because I love the way Pino plays out so much more.
Continuum Studio.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I forgot. Okay, so they did the live one after that. Yeah. Got it. I need to go back and study those.
So it's mostly the same tunes. I think it's all the same tunes. There might be some tunes from the older records on the live thing. It's a lot of tunes from Continuum. Yeah. And I like the way Pino plays on that. So I spent some time with that because it's just all happening and it just feels amazing.
Absolutely.
Like, ridiculous.
There's so much good Pino and good bass playing in general to listen to now. I've been really like, I can't stop listening to the new Raphael Sadiq.
I haven't heard it.
Oh, you gotta hear it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I was on. So Bass Player magazine got sold. I didn't know this actually until I was like some dudes from the new magazine had hit me up on Facebook and I did a podcast with one of the guys. But it's called Bass Magazine now. It's just Bass Magazine.
Not Bass
online.
Player Magazine.
Yeah. It's just, Bass Player still exists, but it was bought out by a company in UK.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like same brand, different cats.
Maybe that's why. So I had one feature in Bass Player.
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
I think the guy who I was connected with on that is not there anymore or something. Maybe it happened in the changeover.
It's possible. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know too much about it all. I recently just learned about it in like the last 2 weeks. Like really what went down. Okay. But I was on their site earlier today, and I saw a little article or something about Raphael's new record. Mm-hmm. But I haven't checked it yet. And it's funny, man. He's been at 3 of my gigs.
Really?
Yeah, it's all really awkwardly. Like, and they're just like little whatever gigs in the valley.
Yeah. Because his studio's up there.
Yeah, and at one time we played. It was at the Federal Jam session. So Yaji and I started that like 6 years ago or something. It doesn't happen anymore. But we would always have a different singer, and whatever tunes they wanted to do, the band would rehearse those tunes and then open it up. And Jacob Luttrell, who is a Capitol songwriter, I don't fully know his writing credits, but it's like some major stuff, like Bieber, whatever. Mm-hmm. He was doing it, and he wanted to do a Tony, Tony, Tony song. Mm. So we played Tony, Tony, Tony in front of Raphael, which was crazy.
Was he cool?
He was cool. And then another time, again, at the Federal Bar, it was me and a guitar player named Julian Coriel playing duo in the corner. But it was like we were doing mashups. So it'd be like Radiohead into Donna Lee, into Steve Miller Band, into some other standard. And it would just be like a long set. Yeah. And Raphael was there one night and came up to me to ask me for Julian's card. Shit. I'm like, I don't know, man. Let me just go get Julian. Like,
I know. Like, yeah, I guess you don't need a bass player.
Yeah, I guess you're good on that.
Actually, you know who informed me? Antoine Katz. We were hanging. He told me about the bass player who plays for Raphael when they play live. Who lives here? Daniel, I guess his last name is Aged. I thought it would be pronounced different, but Aged. Okay. Yeah, he's a LA cat. Huh. And like he's amazing.
Huh. I don't even know the name.
Yeah. like kind of under the radar, but he does bass in the live show.
Wow.
I know. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that. And I guess he kind of produces and does different cool things too. Okay. So you should check him out.
Yeah.
But the bass playing alone on the new Raphael record is like something to behold.
Really?
Oh, and it's just everything, especially now that I'm into production. It's just like, it's the writing, it's the way he can do a simple drum loop and make music for like 4 minutes on top of it. Okay. And like make you don't. It's
is like the drum loop like really dense, or is it more on some like
pretty loopy
PYT, just like? Well, that's not PYT. What tune am I thinking of? Billie Jean is the song. Billie Jean. Where it's just like.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's mostly real drums. Okay. I think there is some drum programming on it, but it's mostly acoustic. Like the Solange song he did. Mm-hmm. Like that's a loop, bass and drums. That's kind of his vibe. But he has a knack for like riffs and like 4-bar or 8-bar phrases on bass and chords that are just. Yeah. It just feels good. Okay. It doesn't matter. And on top of that, what's cool about the record is the materials with some real stuff.
Right.
He's talking about his brother who committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
And another brother that he lost to addiction. He grew up in the Bay, and so it's a real personal album on top of being, I think, like probably one of his best musically.
I like that music. I've been hearing that a lot. I don't know. I don't want to know if it's more or less. For me, I'm more aware of it. It's like there's a singer-songwriter named James Arthur.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
That I'm really into, and he's very upfront about he's in recovery. I mean, he's got a song called "Recovery" that's huge, but his battle with substance abuse, like there's no pretense in it, or he's not glorifying it either.
Sure. In
some like rock star way. Like, this is debilitating.
Yeah.
Messed up my life. Kind of. Yeah. I think that's cool. Because I typically have a side rant about what music is to society a lot. Which is like, back in the day, music would be reacting to society to like mirror what's going on. And now I hear more of that from stand-up comedians. Comedians are kind of like the new musician.
Yeah.
So you have all these stand-up guys getting all the stand-up specials, and they're being really politically forward and socially forward with their stand-up bits. And I like that it's being done, first and foremost. And they're not just like one-liner jokes, but they have something to
really say.
Yeah, they're talking about the life we're all living.
Chappelle and everybody.
And it's their perspective on it. And I like when musicians still make sure that it's a personal narrative about the world and not just a pop hit. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay. I mean, at the end of the day, you write enough of them, you'll stumble across a groove that works with the changes that work.
Yeah.
You'll find that, but you won't find the story and you won't find the human. So I like that. I like when people make a decision to go there.
Yeah. I think that's when some of the best music happens.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's necessary because then it's still, no matter in what medium, whether it's commercial or being played in a coffee shop somewhere, it's still art.
Yeah,
it's an artistic response to us negotiating life.
Yeah, I feel like the ultimate goal is to continue to be able to make art and to live with it. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely one of my goals.
Yeah, me too. And always learning how to do that as society changes and technology changes, and that's the job.
Definitely.
Just trying to keep it happening.
Yeah. I know. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. Dude, when you get some tracks, send them to me. I'll post them.
All right, sweet.
I'll have some things up so people can check you out. And,
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cheers.
Right, thanks, dude. If you have enjoyed this episode and would like to know more about upcoming guests and other Bass Shed happenings, you can text the word SHED, S-H-E-D, to 66866. I try to make it easy. I try to make it easy as possible to stay connected. And let's be honest, we're all sending texts throughout the day, so just shoot me one. Shoot me one that says SHED, S-H-E-D, to 66866. and we'll get you plugged into the newsletter. You can also hear previous versions of the podcast at Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Please take a second to rate the show. And if you'd like, you can donate to keep this thing happening. There is a link for that at thebasshed.com/podcast. So that was my talk with Aidan Carroll. I had a great time hanging with him and talking through all that. That was a lot of fun. And I know I say that every time that I had a great talk with so-and-so, and that's because I did. I genuinely love being able to connect with so many different musicians, and hear from them about where they're at in their artistry and their career, and more importantly, their personal journey within music. Right, that's what it is. That's what fascinates me. Because playing an instrument, music theory, things like this. There's universal fundamentals that we all have to cover, but how everybody digests that and how it comes out and how it's displayed in each of our lives, that's the individual artist aspect of it all. And I like hearing about other people's journeys through it, and that was Aidan's. That's his story. I'm sticking to it. My name's Ryan, and I will catch you on the next one.